Alright, so I'm out here in our vegetable garden in the rain here. I wanted to show y'all real quickly what it looks like when it does rain. We'll be getting rain literally all week, so our ground will be saturated, soggy, flooded, and this is exactly why I do rows in our garden, because if you look closely here, our plants are not setting in the rain. All the water goes towards the areas where we walk, and so the plant itself is raised up out of the water somewhat. So I would highly recommend you maybe make rows if you don't do that. I've seen some pictures out there. Check this out of a flat garden. There's any rows at all whatsoever. Also, another thing to keep in mind is if you are having problems with your flooded garden, and maybe it depends on what kind of area you have in your backyard, you may need to do a raised bed. Ours are not necessarily raised garden beds. I've got it framed up mainly just to frame up and keep the grass out, and of course that gives us a little more room to add amendments over the years, and it does settle back down and gives us just a little more ability to keep our soil not so saturated when it does rain like this. We are actually on a slope in our backyard. It's kind of hard to tell, but we're actually in the bottom end of the slope here. It goes up this way in our backyard and slopes down towards this end. But once again, as the water drains towards the garden, we've got this framed up bed here, so it'll most likely go around the garden. It's not going to go through the garden and wash out the garden. Only whatever rain's falling inside the actual garden will stay there, which is just fine. There's no need to actually cover your garden and protect it from the rain. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Don't put tarps on top of your garden just because we got a lot of rain. We have had quite a bit of hail the past couple of weeks, and we've been very lucky not to get any of that hail damage, or our garden would be totally lost. A total loss. Many people out here in North Texas have had a total garden loss because of the severe hail weather we've had lately. But there's just a quick look at our garden as it is raining down outside here. As you can see, all of our seeds have sprouted. Our basil is the only one that has really slowly started to take off. We've got all of our cucumbers coming up here as well, and our tomatoes. Another thing I'd also keep in mind, I've seen some people and heard some people do, is when you're preparing your garden, your vegetable garden soil, never dig out your existing soil and then backfill it in with compost or a nice loose sandy deliciousness that you may find at your local soil company or wherever you may get your soil from. Never dig out a whole bunch of soil. What you're pretty much doing there is making a pool. You're digging a pool, digging a big old hole. We've got heavy clay soil here in Texas, and that clay soil is like digging a pool there. So all around your garden where you've dug your hole, you're going to backfill it with this nice loose soil, and what you've done is pretty much built a pool for your garden. And when it rains for a week in a row like we're about to have, that thing is going to fill up. It's going to be water saturated, and the water will have nowhere to go, because what you've pretty much done is built a pool in your backyard for your vegetable garden. So never dig out soil. Amend your existing soil is what I would recommend you do. But if you've already got your stuff in the ground and it is waterlogged, what I would do is nothing. Leave it alone. I highly recommend do not walk in your garden when it is raining. Hopefully you've built some rows throughout your garden so you can get to areas if you need to, but do not do nothing to your plants. If they're waterlogged, underwater, don't dig them out, don't put them in pots. Leave it alone. Most likely they will be just fine, but now you know and you learn from your mistakes, and you'll be a much better gardener next year. So just leave everything alone. The less you mess with the garden, the better. Once again, as you can see, the standing water is next to the plant. It's not, the plant itself is not underwater, as you can see if you look down here at this plant here, and the water is next to it because it's in these rows that I've, you know, raised up. I told you, like last time on the video, I use a hoe and just pile up the soil and make them nice and high. They do settle after a little bit, so you got to make sure you get them high enough to consider the settling of the soil. Here is our artichoke I showed you a while back. We've already harvested a couple of artichokes. I need to get out here and actually harvest these because you want to harvest them before they start opening up. You want a nice and tight bulb to harvest there. Our tomatoes are coming along. One thing on tomatoes, I would say, a lot of people are asking about should you prune off these first flowers. We got tomato flowers. The only things that I only do to our tomatoes, if you notice, is the bottom first few leaves, stems, I'll trim up, just mainly to keep them off the ground as they get larger. I would never just prune off flowers. Doesn't make sense to me. Once I get them in the ground, I let them do their thing. Let nature grow on its own, and the more you mess with your garden, the more issues you will most likely have. For me, we do not mess with the garden. We don't, prune off flowers off the tomato plants or this or that, or hand pollinate squash. I don't have time for that. So the less you mess with your garden, the better off you will most likely be. Actually, I already have a few tomatoes here. This is the smaller tomato plants here. This is the yellow plum tomato plant here. You can see it has a few on there already. Let me show you this side of the garden while it's raining here. As you can see, this weed fabric is highly recommended. I mean, you can tell around the edge of my fabric here, all the weeds that are growing. I've been out here picking some of it before the rain, but I mean, this is ridiculous. Here you can see a pile of weeds I've been clearing out around the edge of the bed. Weed fabric, highly recommended. Here's our squash in this bed, coming up very nicely, and our newly remodeled perennial herb bed, doing just fine. And we come over here, our asparagus. I gotta get out of here and pick this asparagus. Actually, it's time. You don't want to get any taller than this to pick. I mean, this stuff looks good. And you can just snap them off at the bottom, where I have an asparagus knife that I use. And yeah, so these are looking really good. I mean, these are nice thick asparagus. This asparagus bed's been in here probably 6 or 7 years now, so we've been getting asparagus like crazy. You gotta come out here about every day and pick them. Just scroll around here and you can see our potato plants have grown like crazy, or lettuce. We got so much lettuce out here. We've been eating this as fast as we can. So there's just what I want to show y'all as it's raining, is to keep in mind of nature, and it does rain, so you got to plan to make sure your plants are not waterlogged. That includes amending your soil with a lot of rich compost and amendments to keep them nice and loose, as well as raising the plant a little bit elevated, like I did with rows, so then you don't have these plants just soaking in rain in the bottom. So hopefully I'll give you a few tips if you are still thinking about starting your garden, or maybe you've got some problems this year with your garden. Our onions over here looking great. So anyways, there's just a quick tips for the day as it's raining out here in our garden. So hopefully y'all stay dry and make it a great day.